Here's my game of the day from round 4 of the Tata Steel Masters, and what a game this is. Matthias Blübaum playing white against Javokhir Sindarov. Now, Sindarov had a fantastic 2025, culminating in his victory in the World Cup in November. But he's started the Tata Steel Masters with 3 draws, but actually some extraordinary games. He salvaged a draw miraculously against Gukesh. Then in another long game, he missed a win against Giri, and then in the third round, well, he had quite a tame draw. He was exhausted, basically. Matthias Blübaum, he's had a good start, a couple of draws, and yesterday, as we saw, he defeated his compatriot Vincent Keimer. So this was always going to be an interesting encounter, as the two will be facing each other in the Candidates Tournament in March. So let's see what happened, and you do not want to miss this. Blübaum opened with d4, and in the World Cup we saw Sindarov playing usually d4, d5, and a solid opening as black. But today he played the King's Indian, so that's an indication that he wants a fight. He wants something unbalanced, and Blübaum goes for this line with h3. Now, he's quite an expert in this, and it has a good reputation. Basically, white often tries to steer the game towards a kingside attack, so it's very aggressive. And well, Sindarov didn't play one of the usual moves like e5, knight a6. He played a5, so a little bit unusual. Normally you only play this kind of flank advance once the centre is fixed, but let's see what happened. Knight a6 and bishop d3, bishop develops, and e5. Okay, so now it's looking more like a normal King's Indian with this pawn coming to e5. And white already has to be a little bit careful here. If you close the position, then the knight comes to h5, and already this looks a little bit uncomfortable for white, actually. But Blübaum simply castled, maintaining the tension, and Sindarov decided to just release the tension, and knight c5, and the bishop came back to c2. So the e-pawn is protected by these two pieces. Now, in some ways, this is a typical King's Indian structure. White has space, and if black doesn't manage to break out, then this space advantage can be really dangerous for black. You can just get squashed off the board. So already, we have quite an imbalanced position. Rook e8. So pressure here. Now, f3 from Blübaum, protecting the pawn. Now, I was a little bit surprised to see that, because you can see that with this pawn on h3, it leaves the dark squares around the king a little bit weaker. Now, at the moment, black is not invading there, but I would be tempted to look at a move like queen f3 to protect this pawn. But in playing f3, it does mean, you might advance with g4 later, and with the pawn on h3 protecting g4, that could be very solid. That could be a way of squashing black. c6, well, this move is necessary because these squares need protecting. Otherwise, at some moment, a knight is going to land here. But of course, and it's the standard move in these kind of King's Indian positions, but there is a drawback. It means this pawn is a bit weaker. Queen d2, solid move, and also looking at the dark squares. So, yeah, looks good to connect the rooks. take control of this diagonal. A4, black needs counterplay. So it could be that this pawn advances here just to weaken the squares on the diagonal. But also, Sindarov plays queen a5. So he's given himself a little bit of room, and the queen comes to an active square looking here, looking across here, and maybe looking at the b4 square as well. And Blübaum went for bishop f4. So a direct attack on the pawn on d6. And Sindarov just played knight e6. So that if this is exchanged off, and bishop takes d6, then bishop takes c4, and black is breaking out. That's exactly what black wants. And then we have a real fight on our hands there. Those bishops look pretty tasty. So Blübaum decided just to nudge back with bishop e3. And now an aggressive move. Sindarov seized the moment and played knight h5. Now, you don't have to play like this. This gives up a pawn. You could exchange on d4, play bishop e6. But knight h5 looks at these weakened dart squares. You see what I mean? This pawn on h3. If you're on h2, wouldn't have the same effect. But, well, not only is the g3 square weak, but h3 could be a bit of a target as well. Let's take a look. Knight takes a4. Blübaum, after 12.5 minutes, decides to accept the pawn. Of course, an exchange of queens would be very desirable for white. But Sindarov exchanged on d4. And again. And this allows him to sweep the queen across the board. And now, how is white's king feeling with the queen across here? Threat, bishop takes h3. That knight could come into f4. Starting to look a little bit dangerous for white. But, well, Blübaum fought for 25 minutes here. There are various things to do. He could bring the queen back, but he went for rook d2, just guarding that pawn on g2. And the point is this, that if bishop h3, you can push with f4. He must have spent a lot of time calculating this move. And if knight takes, actually queen e3 is a winning move. The pin is too much. And if queen g3, well, rook f3 is interesting. Check. Here, bishop back, queen f2, force an exchange of queens. Well, it's probably not bad for black, but white is also okay there. Anyway, I'm sure that's what he spent his time looking at, bishop h3. But Sindarov played something else. He went for knight f4. So he didn't want to allow white to break free and continues the initiative. So yeah, there are now knight h3 could be a little bit uncomfortable. Well, bishop h3 as well, actually. Bishop h3, I guess, is the main threat here. So king h1, just stepping out of the queen's line. And Sindarov really goes for it. He plays queen h6. So just making the king's life rather uncomfortable, because now Blübaum has to think about what is happening if there's a sacrifice here. And if white brings the knight back, okay, you would like to bring this knight back from the edge, then rook a5. What an idea. That rook sweeps across the board, and that is very uncomfortable for white. Blübaum took on d6, and Sindarov took on h3. So it's all kicking off now, and after pawn takes, well, black has a draw straight away. So queen takes, check, hits the rook, so the king has to step to the side. Queen g3, king here, and so on. It's a draw by perpetual. But Sindarov wanted more. He played rook e6. Now I might return to this position at the end, but here Blübaum played queen c5. And here is where I'd like you to have a think. I'm going to have a drink of my lovely Yorkshire tea. So yeah, very tricky position. How are you going to play with black? Black to play. I'll see you after these words. Do you want to improve your chess? Get exclusive access to live masterclasses with yours truly? Get hot opening ideas? Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month you get a newsletter with a detailed test game to gauge your standard of play. A monthly video with puzzles to test your calculating skills. A monthly opening survey where I give my take on a hot variation. Access to an archive of over 100 opening surveys. Access to video playlists so you can research your favourite openings using the PowerPlayChess archives. And as a patron, you're able to join in the exclusive live masterclasses where you can ask me questions directly. All this for only $25 a month. That's exceptional value. So do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. Enjoy the benefits and improve your chess. Don't forget, my next live masterclass exclusively for patrons will be taking place this Thursday evening. I'll be sending out the Zoom link very soon. Right, let's get back to the game. What did Sindarov play here? Well, he went for knight d3. Brilliant stuff. Obviously overlooked by Blübaum. It's a very unusual kind of tactic. So first of all, the knight hits the queen, but also it opens up this diagonal so that the rook is now en prise. So if bishop takes knight, then queen takes rook, and there are two pieces attacked. Black is going to come out ahead on material. Okay, and yeah, if the queen steps back, then queen takes rook anyway. So Blübaum took the knight with the rook, but then queen h3 check. King here, queen g3 check. Is it going to be a draw? Oh no. g5. That is the killer move, threatening rook h6 checkmate. And there is no decent defense. Blübaum resigned. What a fantastic victory by Javokhir Sindarov. A sparkling game. Let's just go back a few moves. So queen c5 looked so natural because, you know, it guards the 5th rank, prevents that rook invading, prevents black's rook coming up here. But it was a mistake. In fact, if there are two moves that draw, queen d7 draws. And there's nothing better than just to give perpetual check here. Because if rook e5, threatening this, then rook h2, and if rook h5, then the queen shoots back along the d file. I mean, this is such a tricky position. There's another move which looks plausible. Queen d4 looks very plausible, but that would lose. Queen h3. I mean, there's some beautiful tactics here. And now g5, threatening mate. Rook h2, and black wins with queen takes rook, rook h6, and knight e2 check, forking king and queen. Fantastic. So it was really tricky, but there were two drawing moves. Queen d7. is drawing, and also Queen b4 was drawing, which looks bizarre, but actually it holds because the queen can still come back to d2 in crucial variations, but very hard to see. Queen c5, very unlucky. Knight d3, what a move. Sindarov was understandably very excited after the win. He said, "It's a typical King's Indian. You get some very bad position, and then you're playing for your opponent's mistake." Well, I don't think his position was so bad, but I think he created enough chaos in this position to induce a mistake from Blübaum. This was a very, very difficult position to defend. Fantastic stuff. You know, back in the day, Kasparov, in his youth, was a killer with the King's Indian. But experience eventually taught him to, you know, it's not that great. And he moved on to the Slav, the Queen's Gambit accepted with black. I think you need youthful energy and optimism to play the King's Indian, and Sindarov has that in abundance. Right, let's take a look at the standings. So, after 4 rounds, there are 2 players in the lead. Hans Niemann, who won a good game today, and Noribek Abdusatorov, who also won a good game. And then Sindarov, Van Foreest and Eregaisi are on 2.5. And at the bottom, Pragyanananda and Giri on 1 out of 4. They're really struggling at the moment. There we go. Hope you enjoyed that. See you soon.